Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, depending on the country that you are joining us today. Welcome, everybody, to this first edition of this webinar, Recovery of the Species on the Brink of Extinction, Request for Proposal. We are really thankful since this call totally exceeded our expectations with a high demand. We are also thankful for having developed this activity in partnership with National Geographic Society. Today are with us people from National Geographic. One is Workman, who is Senior Director for Wildlife, and the other one is Luisa Arnedo, who is the Senior Program Officer and who worked directly with this request for proposal. Many thanks for joining us today. From the SSE, the Species Survival Commission Office, are with us today John Paul Rodríguez, who is the chair of this office, and Kira Mileham, who is the Strategic Partnerships Director. They are going to share with us all their knowledge and expertise about this grant opportunity. Let me introduce myself. I'm Naomi Andrade, the Partnership and Grant Officer from the SSE, and today is with me Aritza Rodríguez, and we will be the support team. Regarding the program that you already received in the welcome email, we are going to have basically two focal points during this webinar. One is in charge of John Paul and Catherine, who will talk about this species recovery grant, about this initiative as a whole. And after, we will have to Luisa, who will talk about the review process and will give you some tips in order to know how you can improve your proposal. After that, we are going to have our question and answer session. Related the rules for participating in this discussion, as you were notified by email, the questions will be taken in writing only. For do that, we have prepared a Google spreadsheet that you already received in the welcome email, where we are going to receive your questions classified in some pre-selected categories in order to facilitate this process. We really encourage you to use this file during the webinar, since we want to build a database with your questions for having a record of your participation. All these questions will be addressed during the question and answer session of this webinar. In case you have problem using this file, don't worry, you will have the opportunity to ask your questions via the written chat during the event. But please just use it as a last resource if possible, because as I mentioned before, we want to have a record of your participation. Now, let's start with John Paul, who is the chair of the Species Survival Commission. Please, John Paul, go ahead.
Hello. Hello, good morning, everybody. It's wonderful to be here, and thank you so much for your attendance. I wanted to very briefly introduce the request for proposals, which was launched for the first time this year, at the beginning of the year, and it has 4 quarterly cycles. This year we had 3, and next year we will have 4. As you can see on the slide, the number of applications is much larger than the number of funded projects, and that's one of the reasons for having this webinar, to improve people's chances of writing successful projects. That they were currently in the 3rd round, and the next one will be in January 9th. So there's about a month between now and the due date of your proposals, and we hope that will give you enough time to develop strong proposals this time around. Next slide. I just wanted very briefly to outline how this grant proposal, this request for proposals, falls within the general planning of SSC's activities. You can see there at the center of the slide what we call the species conservation cycle of SSC, the Species Survival Commission. which starts in assess, goes to plan, and then to act. We call it the assess, plan, act. At the center of the cycle is the SSC network, and all of this is embedded in a communications effort, which is illustrated by those gray shadows around the whole cycle. We begin the assess, plan, act cycle by assessing the risk of extinction of species on the red list of IUCN, which you can visit online and see, find information on the risk of extinction of about 100,000 species, plus many other bits of information that are very useful to help you prepare your proposals. The next step in the cycle, the plan, is the development of action plans, which take the information of the red list and turn it into what is needed to be done to save the species. This is very important because this request for proposals with National Geographic uses the action plans as the guide to decide what a priority project is. It is very important that any of you use these action plans when developing your projects. And finally, in the act stage is the request for proposal itself as an example of how we turn these action plans into actual action and hopefully improve the status of species. There's a cycle that never ends. Once a project has been implemented, it leads to a change of the status of the species, which affects the assessment stage again, and it goes on and on. So this is a very, very important component of the cycle for us because it shows specialist group members and others of the scientific community that the work they do in developing the red list actually leads in improvement of the status of species through this program. So that's what I have to say. Thank you all for being here, and I will just remain in the call for any questions later on.
Thank you, Paul. Catherine, please go ahead.
Great. Can you hear me, Naomi?
Yes, yes.
Great. Okay. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome. Good morning. Good evening. National Geographic is thrilled to be partnered with IUCN SSC on this funding opportunity, where the goal is to help halt further biodiversity declines by implementing conservation plans for species and groups of species. And this is through funding priority activities in conservation action plans, as well as conservation actions that have been endorsed by the relevant IUCN SSC specialist groups. So what we want to do here is help mitigate biodiversity declines by funding the activities that have been identified as the most important ones. And in order to help us do that, we require that all applications include a letter of endorsement signed by the chair, the regional or thematic lead of the relevant specialist group. A template for this endorsement letter is available on the website, and I can't emphasize enough that we require this letter to come in with all applications. You will hurt yourself if you do not submit this letter of endorsement. And again, you can just go onto our website. The hyperlink is down at the bottom of this page here to see a template of that letter of endorsement that just needs the signature by the chair, the regional, or the thematic lead of the relevant specialist group. In fact, looking at that link right there, that is the best place for any applicant to receive information about this funding opportunity. So I would encourage everyone listening here to familiarize yourself with the guidelines, the policies, the budgets, the timelines that are available on the website. And as Naomi said earlier, the next deadline is January 9th. So we hope that people will have a chance to look at the website, familiarize yourself, and then reach out with any questions in advance of that deadline. So we require applications to include that letter. We want to fund proposals across a range and a diversity of both geographies and taxonomies. So National Geographic has had a focus in big cats going back to 2009. We have a conservation program that is focused on, in particular, African big cats, lions, cheetah, and leopards. Through this fund, we're attempting to broaden and diversify the amount of investment that we are giving, both in terms of geography and also for taxonomy. So we want more applications from underrepresented, so to speak, or lesser known groups. So we certainly want to be funding across both marine and terrestrial species, freshwater species. We want to see applications for plants. Oftentimes the applications we're getting there is for groups of species. So several species of dipterocarps, for example. We want to fund across both amphibians and reptiles. We want to fund, of course, birds and mammals. That's where we see the most applications, but we are trying to fund across the range. We want to be funding across all continents. It's an attempt. We're funding based on the quality of applications and whether or not the applications are going to do what they say they're going to do, the feasibility of the applications. But our intention is that we want to fund a range. Priority. We give priority to proposals that are led by someone, the PI, the principal investigator, is someone from the country where the fieldwork is being conducted. This is, again, National Geographic's desire to support capacity development so that we're not just funding Americans and Western Europeans leading these projects. We require that all applications include a local team member. So for example, if I was applying for the project and my fieldwork was in Vietnam, I am required to have a Vietnamese team member. I want to say here, while we give priority to proposals led by someone from the country where the fieldwork is being conducted, we also, another reason we're doing this webinar is we want to fund the most feasible and most likely to succeed proposals. So we're putting the thumb on the scale for proposals where applicants are coming from the country or the region, but we're also recognizing what the quality of applications and so it's one of our assessments. And again, the link down here is just to emphasize that the best place to get information about this funding opportunity is on the website.
Many thanks, Catherine. Luisa, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Naomi, and hi, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here and talk a little bit about the process and what I'm indirectly involved on this call for applications. So as Naomi said, I'm Senior Program Officer here at National Geographic, and I oversee this RFP. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what the process is, so you understand that this is a very competitive, call, and there are a lot of eyes that go through it. So when you apply, the first part of the selection is that it comes to a program officer, so it comes to me. And in that first step, what we look at is for accuracy, for clarity, for feasibility, and all the requirements that has to be met. And that includes the endorsement letter that Catherine mentioned. That basically, if you don't have the letter, I automatically have to decline the application. I look also that the budget meets the requirements. I look at the goals and the objectives, and that they are clear. And that as a whole, the project makes sense. But obviously, I'm not an expert in this area, so we rely on a panel of experts, external experts that we have, that they really have the expertise in each topic. And once I have done the first filter, the applications that I decide to send out to review, they go to at least two. We get a minimum of 2 external reviews from the panel of international experts, and they provide more, comments that are more on the technical aspects of the application, based on their expertise. They look a lot at the methodologies, particularly, and obviously, that the goals and the objectives are feasible, and what is the priority of the project in the area. If this is really something that is like really needed in the place where people are going to work. Once we get the scores back from the experts, I go through that list again and I look at the reviews, and we do a second selection in that point. The applications that haven't been reviewed, very well, or that have very low scores are declined again, and the ones that remain go to our internal panel of reviewers, which include, several individuals in National Geographic, and, our international directors and senior directors. And once again, they just provide, scores and recommendations. And now the ones that remain go to a CRE, so they go to the Committee for Research and Exploration, and we have a meeting here with them that is our panel of experts, our advisors. They are basically our scientific advisors for National Geographic, and with the CRE, we present the projects that remain, and they look at it and they make basically recommendations for funding at the end. So as you see, there are at least 3 or 4 filters in the process, and there are a lot of eyes looking at the projects. So, this is a way that we really are sure that it's a peer-reviewed and very fair process for everybody. Naomi, you can go to the next slide. So, because I'm so heavily involved in the entire process, and we discussed that we could give you a few of the most common reasons for declination. This is obviously very general. We look at a lot of detail, but what the first thing is that, in that first step, if the project doesn't meet rate requirements, then you are immediately hurting yourself. So again, the endorsement letter, if the endorsement letter is not there, then it's automatically out. As Jean-Paul and Catherine mentioned, this is for implementation. So if the funds are requested for assessment or evaluation, then we are not covering that at this point. We also look at that the PIs has a minimum of expertise. And as Catherine said, we give priority to PIs that are from the country where the work is going to be done. But we want to be sure that that person definitely have the expertise to do the work. If you are not from the country but you don't have a local collaborator, then that is another reason to decline the application. So just be sure that when you go to the website, you read the requirements and you're very sure that you are meeting every single them. The other most common reason is that the project is too big. With the conservation action plans, what happens very, very often is that people want to do everything. They say here's the conservation action plan. Here are the recommendations. We are going to do everything. And you have to be aware, these are projects that are for a year, they're $50,000. So, what you need to show is that what are the steps that you're going to do, what are the actions that you're going to do that actually National Geographic is going to be covering. Even if the project is big, you need to be able to put in the proposal what is exactly that you're going to do. Same if the project is too big, that is all over the place, that is just kind of like a pieces of other different projects, or that is unrealistic, that is just, again, it's too big and it's just no way that, you are going to be able to do it. We look very closely at the goals and objectives, that we wanted that they are clear and that they are smart. Reviewers, external reviewers, look a lot at the methodology. This is the part that they really, really look at it very, very carefully. So if the methodology is vague or unclear, or the methodology is incorrect, that is a big, no on it. That you don't have a clear measure of success, that there are no clear outcomes, is also a reason for rejection. You know, like you don't know what you're gonna get at the end. You should definitely know what you're gonna get at the end. What is it, how you're gonna know that you were successful is is key to have it. And the other thing that we look at is obviously the budget. Sometimes people apply for like $100,000, $150,000. We have a maximum, and you cannot go over that. We have budget guidelines, and I recommend that you go to the website and look at those guidelines, because when it comes to salaries, when it comes to overhead, and some other things that we cover in certain ways, or we have limits, you need to be sure that you are meeting those guidelines for your project. So those are kind of like the most common reasons for declination. But obviously, like the technical part of it is super important. But I think that this is just a way to give you just a little bit of tips of what to focus on. And I think that with that, we can move on to the next part, Naomi.